Homage to the Triple Gem. So, hello everybody, this is Bante Joe here. And again, I've come down to the middle of this stream here in Welawaya and probably be here for another few days. And so actually this is my second attempt. I started recording, but the camera had shut off for lack of space. I think it ran out, so hopefully this one makes it all the way through. And Vasa time is coming up very soon, so I've recently been traveling around, which is how I ended up here in the first place, and looking at potential places to stay for Vasa. And Vasa for monks can be a bit more of a time for intense practice traditionally. It's a time when monks put aside all of their other commitments. Sometimes they don't go out, don't teach, and they just focus on being on retreat, focus on practicing meditation. And one can see one's practice almost like it has these two modes of effort. And there's going to be more, there's going to be everything in between, but one can look at broad categories in terms of two modes. On the one hand, you have a type of effort that's kind of steady. It's a type of thing in which you grow incrementally. So you move forward, you move forward, you move forward, and it's step by step, piece by piece. It's not like a big jump. You have another type of effort in which it's quite acute, quite intense. And this kind of effort can be a bit revolutionary. It can be using this type of effort at the right time, although not exclusive to this type of effort, that one gains significant new things happen in one's practice. So one of the most important ones, the foundation, is this ability to live a lifestyle such that one is moving forward step by step, piece by piece, bit by bit. So when I was a young monk, my preceptor told me this story, told all of us this story, about a monk in the Chinese tradition who had been doing this kind of like walking pilgrimage, where he would walk, he would take 3 steps and then do 1 bow, and then 3 steps and another bow. And he did this, I think, for 1,000 kilometers or 1,000 miles, something really, really long. But the interesting thing was that after he got back to the monastery, he actually ended up disrobing. So at the time, my preceptor was saying something like, well, you know, it's kind of unusual, right? Kind of half joking, like, what's so hard about doing pujas? What's so hard about, sweeping the floor or whatever? But this type of effort is one, this incremental type of effort is one, in which actually it basically extends the stability. It extends the range of what we can do automatically. So one can compare it to kind of if one is in a battle and the enemies arrayed all their forces, and it's got territory and it's got supply lines behind its territory. And then also you've got your forces, you've got your territory, you've got your supply lines, your food, everything feeding your territory. It's possible to take like a small force or, even a large force and just really intensely push through the enemy lines, punch through them, and get into their territory. The thing is, though, that your supplies are back there. You haven't created the network, the transportation systems, the infrastructure to make sure that you're constantly supplied with food, with the various things that you need to sustain your life. So sometimes after this really intense push, one gets behind the enemy lines and the enemy closes the ranks and then comes in and finishes one off. So this is what can be the case if one hasn't developed this kind of more slow and steady effort first. On the other hand, there is this type of effort that's more acute, that's quite important. And our practice can build in such a way that it's almost like the build-up of music towards a crescendo. And thinking kind of like traditional Western music, they would sometimes have this like build-up of a theme of music until it reached this peak, this intensity of emotion. And in a similar way, this incremental practice can build and build and build until it reaches a point where one realizes that one has to put forth this very acute effort in a real do-or-die situation. There's this history of Rome where Julius Caesar ended up fighting this general named Pompey. I won't go into the history of it. It's not a history channel, but it was pretty intense. The whole back and forth was pretty intense and stretching to the limits that one might put forth effort. At the end of it, Pompey had this big fortification, and he decided to send his soldiers out to try to fight with Julius Caesar. And at that time, Julius Caesar had gone onto his territory in Greece, and they'd basically been starving them. They'd basically been, I think they burnt, they took all their crops and like maybe burned things, and so Julius Caesar's army had nothing to go on. So they were eating like roots and these kind of things. But this one day, Julius Caesar could tell that Pompey was sending his forces out, and something looked different. It looked like they were about to attack. It looked like rather than just kind of playing with them, like sending them out a bit or trying to draw them on, whatever it might be, something genuinely different was going on. So he noticed this and he informed his troops, attack them, and he basically said, stick your pikes in their faces, which in ancient times was what happened. The long and short of it is that he ended up routing Pompey's forces and defeating Pompey, and after that he basically became the first, you call it like king, maybe the first emperor of Rome, you could call it, after this very acute battle where he destroyed his rival, destroyed all these senators who didn't want him. So in a similar way, there can be these times in our practice when we can see that our enemy is showing his head. Actually, it's one of the things that the best times to strike back at the things that cause us to suffer are when they show their head. If they're just hiding behind their fortifications, if we throw, missiles, if we throw arrows at their castle and they're just hiding behind the walls, they just bounce off the walls. They haven't shown their head. It might damage the walls, which is not a bad thing. And of course, it's good to be training for that. It's good to be always practicing. But there is this time when it's different, when they actually do show their head. So this can kind of manifest itself in one's practice, and one has been practicing slowly, been practicing steadily, and one feels this kind of frustration. It's kind of like, I've been suffering from this thing for so long, and I'm sick of it. I want next time this thing happens, I'm not letting it escape. I'm going to put forth everything that I can to try to come to a solution to this problem. At this point in our mind, it can be almost like trying to follow a very sneaky thief, see where he goes left, to see where he goes right, up, down, whatever direction it goes, the mind has to be on top of that to a certain extent, and investigating it to see what the cause and effect relationship is, to really try to understand it. So this is like a very heated or pitched battle with an enemy in an acute situation. But it's if one knocks the enemy down in this situation that they're kind of finished for good. They don't kind of come back. So if we were to compare these two types of effort, one would be like gradually pushing the enemy back, gradually reducing his forces, and then bringing your supply lines up, making sure that you have all the infrastructure needed to sustain what you've conquered. The other one is when it looks a little bit different. The enemy is showing his head, and now's the time when I have to launch an all-out attack. This is a time when you can kill the generals, kill all the major commanders, basically scatter the enemy, and then that land is safe, that land is yours. So the land that we're referring to here, the territory that we're trying to conquer here, is territory in the mind. The mind gets stirred up, it gets riled up, it gets pushed back and forth here and there, it bubbles up almost like this water right behind me because of the things it attaches to, because of the things it desires and it likes. It's when we finally are able to stop these things, defeat the enemy, that the mind becomes still. It becomes placid in that particular area and doesn't get riled up again so much in that area. One has dealt a major blow. One has done a major defeat to the commander of that area. There's still more commanders, but one has gained something significant. One has won a significant battle and gained territory in their mind. So we train in this way, in the more slow and steady way, as a practice, like warriors who, they have their time in the reserves where they're doing things, and we train more intensely, in pitched ways, so that we're prepared for these acute situations. When both of these things are rightly coordinated, then we can be in a good position to knock down the things that are causing us to suffer, that have been causing us to suffer for so long. And when we grow fed up, this is enough. I've had enough of you stomping all over me, and I'm going to do something about it. And then one does. If one does this, then one can gain back this territory in one's mind. One can make the mind peaceful. One can make the mind still. One can bring in one's supply lines and make that a place where one is fortified, where one has more strength, so that the enemy can't set foot there again, that they're defeated there, so that one can guard that territory such that they cannot reclaim it. And in this way our mind becomes a safer and safer place, and a more of a stronghold for us to launch our attacks to the things that cause us to suffer. Until one day, if we keep going, if we don't stop, we can emerge completely victorious. We can completely completely conquer the land. In other words, we can gain complete control over our mind. We can completely defeat the defilements that lie within there. And this is the purpose for which we practice. So I think leave that for reflection, and wishing everybody all the blessings of Dhamma practice.